to the front row because it's a family. I want to have a family feeling because I don't want to feel that you are withdrawing from the center of what the word this morning that somebody when the master of ceremony said that you are in the eye of the storm, and so be the center of the storm and be strong. So that please, if you can really move to the first front row, that would help us.
No, I'm just, yeah, no, that's fine. No.
Really bad.
I just went with Agensteiner and had some
Yeah,
coffee.
okay.
Taking good care of us, fine.
Sweaty and stressed out.
But you did, I was just looking at it now, but you did teach at the London
Joint Staff College.
Yeah.
They told me that the award will be presented after this opening session because they had other sessions to follow, so that we can go after that.
Whatever you say. Until tonight.
Well, but
Tomorrow.
back in the way of New York.
Okay. All right.
That's what they say, you know, the Sufis, that's what they say.
All right. Good afternoon, dear colleagues from the UN system and dear friends from other entities and governments. It is really my great honor and pleasure to facilitate this part of a very, very important agenda of the Expo. That is the meeting of the multi-stakeholder forum of South-South coordinators of the UN system and other international organizations. And I've seen many familiar faces, so I don't need to introduce anybody. But I would probably start by going through the script that I have, and then we get on with the business. Well, thank you all for attending this important session designed to facilitate experience sharing of concrete measures taken by the UN system and other multilateral organizations to promote South-South and triangular cooperation. The first hour is dedicated to the high-level launch of the South-South Technology Transfer and Resource Mobilization Facility, specifically dedicated to landlocked developing countries, while the rest of the program will focus on sharing of South-South and triangular business models, programs, and initiatives. Today's launch of the South-South facility for the landlocked developing countries highlights the collaborative efforts among UN agencies to achieve coherence and to deliver as one. This facility is a joint initiative of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the Office of the High Representative for Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Development States. And the UN Office is very, very pleased to be a partner of this. And for that, we are very honored to have our esteemed leader, the Under-Secretary General of the UN system for the Office of the High Representative, Your Excellency Jian, and my friend, you really made a big effort to be here. It also reflects our commitment to address some of the most protracted challenges that confront landlocked developing countries. within the framework of South-South and Triangular Cooperation. This facility will be executed through the professional services of the SS Gate. Well, dear colleagues, the UN launched, the UN Office for South Cooperation launched the Gate in 2008 as a global transaction and service platform that facilitates end-to-end market-driven exchanges of technology, assets, services, and financing among public-private sectors and civil society. It matches demand and supply for technology transfer and finance in core areas such as infrastructure, food security, global health, and climate change. In the 2009 Nairobi Outcome Document, the UN General Assembly endorsed the SS Gate as one of the pillars of the multilateral South-South support architecture and encouraged developing countries and the UN system to leverage the services of this platform. Participating on the high-level panel discussion today, we have a truly distinguished personalities, and I'm sure that whose bios have been circulated with you. Actually, you don't really need their bios. Their leadership and vision are their bios. But let me quickly also just name them. To my left is His Excellency Gian Acharya, Under-Secretary General of the UN, and also the USG for the High Representatives for the LDC, Landlocked and SIDS office. And we also have Honorable John Nasira, Uganda's Minister for Information, Communication and Technology. We have also His Excellency Martin Kimani, Kenya's Ambassador and Permanent Representative to UNEP. We have His Excellency Dr. Waba Kasisi Bota, who is the Zambia's Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the United Nations. We have Mr. Gopi Menali, Joint Secretary of National Planning Commission of Nepal. We have Mr. Mano Chandra, who is the Chairman of Concraft Group and the Patron of Global Peace Foundation's Africa Leadership Council. And please join me in giving our esteemed panel a round of applause. Now, it is totally out of protocol to miss the most important person in this lineup. And therefore, before we hear from the USG, Gian, of the Office of High Representative for Least Developed LDC, Landlocked and SIDS, I am very pleased to invite our guest speaker, my boss, real boss, His Excellency Ambassador Zord Hetze, the Vice President of the UN General Assembly High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, Ambassador and Deputy Permanent Representative at the Permanent Mission of Hungary to the UN in the UN headquarters in New York. And please join me in welcoming to him to deliver a welcoming remarks.
YP, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Under-Secretary General, distinguished ministers, Your Excellencies, government leaders at the podium. It gives me great pleasure as a representative of a landlocked country from another region to be here and speak to you on this event. And I would like to thank the Office for South-South Cooperation and also the Under-Secretary General and their teams for organizing this meeting. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the pivotal period in our life as far as development is considered. As you know, by 2015, the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, will run their course, and then hopefully by that time we will be able to start with a new framework, the post-2015 development agenda. During the process that we have witnessed with the MDGs, certain things have become very clear. And one thing that has become extremely clear is no matter what kind of lofty ideas we agree on and put on the table, the implementation of it will be only adequate if we pay special attention to the vulnerable and the marginalized. Universality in our dictionary also means that no one should be left behind. One of the lessons learned, as I have mentioned, from the MDG process is that an all-inclusive, properly targeted agenda must fully reflect the concerns of all countries. This is why, for example, the Open Working Group that is devising the Sustainable Development Goals in New York now will dedicate a full session in December, a 5-day session, dealing with the needs of countries with special needs. As you know, 31 countries around the world are recognized by the United Nations General Assembly as being landlocked developing countries. Despite their best efforts, these countries remain detached from the global trading and financial systems. The state of landlockedness is an impediment that requires a rethinking of the strategy and also the programming work. In this case, I think we can fairly state that one size fits all definitely doesn't work here. And also, it is in this context that the 10-year comprehensive review of the Almaty Program of Action is planned next year. Distinguished delegates, as I have mentioned, LLDCs belong to the Global South, and the launch of this initiative reflects the commitment of the United Nations to find practical solutions from the South and for the South that can provide targeted answers to the countries in need. It is against this background that I would like to assure you that today's meeting is an effort that is highly appreciated by the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, and we fully support this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your inspirational statement and also for the assurance and confidence in the office and in this larger partnership, especially with our High Representative's Office for the launching of this initiative. And also, I take your challenge and accept your challenge, and we believe that, that when we work together, we will not fail our legislative body as expectation. And thank you again. Now, we would start the presentation of this facility, and I would start by our first speaker. It is actually more than a presentation because it is with his vision and under his leadership that this facility began to now come into shape. It was not easy. It was not easy, and I think without your commitment, without your encouragement, and my team would not have had that kind of energy to move this initiative with your able team to this point. And so with these words, Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, my dear colleague and the co-host of this event today, Mr. Weepingju. Their Excellencies, the Ministers, Ambassadors, fellow panelists, Mr. Herse, Vice President of UNG High-Level Committee, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to join Mr. Wiping in welcoming you all at this important occasion. It is here that we are announcing the launch of the South-South Technology Transfer Facility for the landlocked developing countries. I just had a talk before coming here, over here, and the Honorable Minister Nasasira from Uganda was referring that we should be calling it a land-linked country. We would like to make that happen, by the way, by having this type of facility work for all the landlocked countries so that they could be really land-linked. Now, allow me first to give you a brief background of how we are looking at it. Of course, the landlocked developing countries are amongst some of the poorest in the world. There are 31 LLDCs, and 15 of them are in Africa. The lack of direct access to the sea hinders their full participation in international trade and markets when you look at their potentials. LLDCs also face additional transport, transit and infrastructure obstacles and challenges. It substantially increased the total expenses for transport services and other trade transaction costs. A recent study done by my office revealed that the LLDC's trade was just 61% of the trade volume of a similar countries if they were coastal, while their transport costs were about 2.5 times higher than a representative coastal economy. There is a lot that can be done to improve that. These challenges greatly impact on the human development as well as the structural transformation of these countries. That same study also found that the level of development in the LLDCs is on average 20% lower than what it would be were the country is non-land linked. So you can see from both the positive as well as the negative aspect of how we can really deal with this landlockedness. The Almaty Program of Action was adopted in 2003. This was the United Nations response to address the growing needs and special development challenges of LLDCs in a collective and focused manner. In 2014, which is the 10 years from that time, the UN will hold a comprehensive 10-year review conference to work out a vision for the next decade. This will be the second UN conference on LLDCs that will formulate a global development framework to support the needs of the LLDCs. It will be based on renewed partnerships among landlocked and transit developing countries and their development partners. Now, I must say that when you look at the transit countries of all the LLDCs, they are also probably in a similar situation in terms of their level of development, but just a little higher in most of the cases. As I have been designated as the Secretary General of that conference, my office is working as the UN system-wide focal point for the conference preparations. The preparatory process is now in full swing at the national, regional and global levels. Preparations are being undertaken in 3 main tracks: intergovernmental track, UN interagency track and the private sector track. A number of thematic pre-conference events on issues relevant to LLDCs were organized by my office as well as many of the UN systems, organizations and agencies. In the substantive preparatory discussions, the South-South cooperation has emerged as one of the important avenues through which LLDCs can also achieve their development objectives, including growth, economic diversification, value addition and capacity development. There is a greatest potential for that. Landlocked developing countries have indeed been increasingly cooperating with their neighbors and other developing countries in the global south. Such cooperation include creation of regional common markets, custom unions, transit arrangements, development of sub-regional and bilateral transport facilitation agreements, and development of cross-country infrastructure. But we need to do more and we need to do better. The newly industrialized and emerging economies in the south have also become major actors in the LLDCs. They are now providers of development assistance, investment, technology, as well as technical assistance. They are also increasingly a major trading partner for them. The South-South Technology Transfer Facility that we are launching today is one of the deliverables towards the LLDC conference next year. We are developing this facility, of course, in cooperation with the SS Cooperation Office, with the aim to make it possible for LLDCs to address some of their development challenges through the adoption of affordable new technologies from the South. These initiatives fit in very well with the overall focus of this global South-South Development Expo and high-level events here. Now, the facility will be a platform at the South-South and triangular transfer of viable, sector-specific technologies aimed at developing and strengthening productive capacities in LLDCs. The technology transfer and adaptation will take place in areas such as sustainable agriculture, dairy and agro-food processing, water management, global health, climate change adaptation, and of course, renewable energy. The facility will aim to match technology solution providers in the global south with recipients in LLDCs, and that express demand for such technologies. It will also enable sharing of knowledge and best practices between and among the LLDCs and their southern partners. The actual matching and transfer of technologies from providers to recipients will be implemented through the existing South-South Global Assets and Technology Exchange, SSGATE, and this is a global transaction and services platform, which links demand and supply for technology transfer and related finance. We have identified 6 landlocked developing countries at the initial stage, namely Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Nepal, Paraguay, Uganda, and Zambia, covering all the regional landlocked countries to pilot initial projects. The facility will progressively establish and strengthen national country centers in these pilot countries and other LLDCs. The center will identify the local needs, source viable projects, and facilitate the negotiations of the technology transfers. The initial experience from the pilots will inform decisions to adapt, scale up, and replicate successful activities in all participating countries in their respective sub-regions. Since this is a launching event, it is our hope that the southern and triangular partners would come forward and extend their full support for this initiative. Support can come in many forms, including through identifying potential technology providers, providing substantive input into the technology transfer plans, and legal and regulatory processes to facilitate cross-border transactions, or in terms of project promotion, as well as resource mobilization. This initiative puts transit countries in particular in the midst of those that can champion the sharing of knowledge, best practices, as well as the successful transfer of suitable and affordable technologies to the LLDCs and facilitate financial resources to help them implement it. The critical starting point is the voluntary support to start a fund in support of LLDC facility. To this end, we will launch early next year a resource mobilization campaign. We have shared with you a background document highlighting the potential of South-South and triangular cooperation for the LLDCs. My office and the Office for South-South Cooperation are ready to provide any additional information. We hope that by doing this, we will create yet another opportunity both for the landlocked developing countries as well as the transit countries to collaborate and to look beyond the traditional patterns of cooperation and make their comparative advantage as well as comparative strength to work for the LLDCs. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement. And I think you laid out the persistent challenges of landlockedness of the LLDC countries. And I think what you have said is, and you launched here, is providing one of the answers to solving some of the challenges that the landlocked countries are facing. And so this effective mechanism, we hope that would actually start with a new legacy that you are going to champion. And I was in Zambia ambassador just mentioned, you have created a new logo, a new headliner, that from landlocked to land-linked. So I hope that this facility will be the driver and the platform for the landlocked countries to be landlocked. And so for that, I thank you so very much. And now I have the honor to invite His Excellency Dr. Martin Kimani, Kenya's ambassador and permanent representative to UNEP. My dear friend, you have the floor.
Thank you, Director, and also thank you for your invitation to be part of this conversation. Honorable Minister Nasasira, welcome to Nairobi, and and the same for you, Mr. Acharya, or Ambassador Acharya, to be more exact. Your Excellency, Dr. Manu. I'm very glad to be here. I'll make my comments as quick as I can, simply because I know I could speak on at length, but that's probably not the point today. I think I'm really going to speak to Kenya as a coastal country and the extent to which we interact with the countries to our west that do not have coasts, and the extent of south-to-south exchange as neighbors that we have to participate in as we go into the launch of this very critical facility. Just for context, my predecessor and Ambassador Macharia Kamau was the president of the General Assembly High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation until quite recently. And I think there's now a Kenyan as well who's a rapporteur. And Ambassador Macharia is now in New York. So we come to this issue as a country that has a great deal of concern and buy-in into the need for South-to-South cooperation. Now, we basically think that if I was to be told to stop this presentation right now, I would say the only thing I need to say is that Kenya considers the fate of the countries to our west that do not have coasts to be part and parcel of our own destiny. We do not see a divergence in where we're going as countries. We do not see any way that we as a country can prosper and thrive without them prospering and thriving. In fact, a substantial amount of our thriving is going to come from providing them with the services and the support that they require to make their economies more competitive in terms of transport infrastructure, technology infrastructures, and all the other levels of capability that Kenya is able to deploy. And so that's just to say, the minister, honorable minister from Uganda, was commenting he doesn't like the word landlocked. And of course, it's a word that comes from a sort of, the days of trains and horses. And it uses somehow, it thinks of landlockedness as a sort of geostrategic disadvantage because people who are on coasts are able to treat you as if they're doing you favors, which they are not. We're in business together and partnership together. So we find that our vision here in Kenya is to not only have deploy world-class transport infrastructure, but also logistical infrastructure, so that we're able to bring technology to bear on the transport infrastructure that we're building. The transport infrastructure of today and tomorrow is going to be very different from that of past years. The logistics are going to have to be far more efficient, far more connected, and far more tech-savvy, if indeed the transport infrastructure is going to deliver the competitiveness that the so-called landlocked countries have. To that end, the government of Kenya has worked very closely with the heads of state, especially of Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan, to ensure that our infrastructure developments in Kenya have them as partners from the beginning, so that we have a vision of shared infrastructure, and perhaps even in the future, shared sovereignty over our infrastructure. His Excellency President Kenyatta is particularly focused as a former business person and as Minister of Finance before in the last government on really metrics that tell you the truth of the matter. The metric that matters greatly to Uganda and Rwanda and South Sudan is how much time does it take for a container to go from Mombasa to the Ugandan border. This is just a simply, you cannot reduce it, you cannot fudge it, it's just a fact. And I think within the last 6 months since the taking up of the new Jubilee government, you've seen that container speeds from Mombasa to the Ugandan border have actually halved, if not more. And our president is still not satisfied with that level of performance. We are at an advanced stage in seeking to launch the LAPSET project, which will be the largest of its kind in Africa, that will involve the construction of highways, roads, railroads, airports, a deep seaport, and transport corridors from Lamu, Kenya to Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. We have made far more efficient our customs clearance procedures at the Mombasa port and other exit and entry points. Just a small anecdote, His Excellency President Museveni and His Excellency President Kagame joined our president at the launch of, another berth in Mombasa port a few months ago. I thought it was a very telling occasion because they all took turns speaking to the port workers in Mombasa, and all of them admonished them about inefficiency and encouraged them to greater efforts. And if you think about that scene of presidents of another country speaking to port workers in a country that's not their own, you see the vision of infrastructure development and connectedness that joins up East Africa. It's not a vision that is protected by Kenya where we think, no, it's our port and that's just our port. No, it's our collective port, and our future is very much tied to approaching it that way. We are moving forward with the rehabilitation of the Mombasa-Kampala Railroad, which will extend also to Kigali. That will be a new standard gauge railway. And Kenya, in our vision of ourselves, sees, if our president wrote an article a few weeks ago called "What We See When We Look East." And his vision was simply one of saying that the resources, the materials, the markets in the interior of Africa are increasingly attractive to investment and products and producers in the growing economies of Asia and elsewhere. And that Kenya has to ensure that the flow of goods, products, ideas, and culture is as efficient as possible. Without us as Kenya doing that, we will be being part of a problem in locking out a great amount of opportunity and competitiveness from not only the African interior, but the rest of the world that depends on the products, the markets that are in the African interior. So our vision then is to be a bridge, a hub not only for roads and railways, but also a hub for ideas, logistical strength, and efficiency. That is where I'll leave it, other than to say that we're very excited by what we've learned about the South-to-South cooperation as it's being pursued by Director Yipi and his colleagues, and with the support of the entire UN Secretariat. We think there's a focus on practicality. We like the bottom line sense of being able to go online and see ways in which southern countries and southern entrepreneurs and people from elsewhere can also enter into practical, to-the-point commercial exchanges using technology. And so with the launch of this facility, it finds us highly in favor of it, and thinking that, if anything, the efficiency costs of the transport costs to so-called landlocked countries need to fall drastically if they're to approach anything close to their potential. Thank you, Chair. I'll be very glad to take questions later if there are any.
Thank you, Your Excellency and Honorable Ambassador. It's really inspiring, and I think all of a sudden I find myself, I'm African, because I was told that my ancestors was an African, so from Africa. And it seems that when you said that we share the compassion, we share the destiny of our neighboring countries beyond even our own borders, not only our neighbors, but probably even help our neighbors, which is landlocked, also to reach the greater world outside. And then you said the share prosperity. I remember the former Prime Minister of Malaysia. His famous line is that prosper thy neighbors. And so you can see the share prosperity is in the South DNA. So that's why I said I really feel that this is my place. Second is that when you said this facility can actually be part of your larger vision for sharing prosperity. It's launched by our Undersecretary General here. It's not by coincidence, because in 2009, when Kenya was the chairmanship or presidency of the high-level committee, we had the high-level conference here, which gave birth to the Nairobi outcome document. And that document recognized the SS Gate platform as one of the major support architecture for that. And then, so 2 years later, we established one of the first SS Gate national chapter right here in Kenya. And now, this facility is born here. So I'm just seeing it's not by coincidence. I believe that it is designed by design, and that there is a calling for the UN, okay, to be not only setting a vision, but put in place a structure to make things happen. And I thank you so very much for your statement. Now I will have the pleasure to invite Her Excellency Dr. Mamba Kasisi Bota, my good friend, ambassador from ambassador and permanent representative of Zambia to the UN. You have your floor, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Your Excellencies, the Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I remember very well the Rio Plus 20 conference, which was held last year in Brazil in June. And one of the areas that we discussed extensively was technology transfer. The discussion was quite hot. I think we spent almost, just in Brazil, we spent about 10 days trying to agree whether we should go with technology transfer or do away with the language of technology transfer. And as we are right now, we are still having the discourse on the shape of the technology transfer for the post-2015 development agenda in New York, not knowing that we've got champions of our own within the South-South Cooperation and the Office of the High Representative for the Least Development Country, as well as the landlocked countries and the small island developing states. It's a very long title for the office, but nevertheless, I think it goes with the kind of work that they are doing. And I'd like to congratulate the officers that have been involved in getting the issue of technology transfer from being an issue of rhetoric to actually action. So congratulations and well done.
Improvement in resource efficiency, generation of knowledge, good governance, and urbanization. This requires improvement in technology efficiency, in resource utilization, and identifying new resources. One of the problem that we have faced is that capital-intensive technology are easy to import but quite difficult to sustain. Often they turn out to be liabilities rather than being assets. However, with the right technology, we improve our chance of not only enhancing quality of our products to reach global market, but also improve production capacity to meet the domestic demand. The facility will, I am sure, help us get the right and appropriate medium-level technology that we can adapt to and benefit from. We need to bring in improved technology, particularly in agriculture, energy, water sector, which are at the core our economy and save the interest of larger population. Thank you once again for selecting Nepal for piloting the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Joint Secretary, and I'm sure that this is the first one in Asia pilot for this facility. We would devote a lot of attention to making sure that you would also receive the maximum support from the headquarters as well as the SS Gate headquarters. Yeah, thank you so very much. Last but not least, now I have the honor to invite His Excellency Manohar Chandaria, the chairperson of Concra Group from the corporate. Your Excellency, Manohar.
Chairman, Your Excellency, Ms. Zhao, and panel, distinguished people on the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a private sector man, and I believe in action rather than having ideas and thoughts. We operate in 16 countries in Africa, and out of them, some of them are landlocked, like Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda. We used to operate in Burundi earlier, in Malawi. These are the countries which that I see right now on the eastern coast of Africa. We also operate on the west coast of Africa. The point is, whose responsibility is that? The word landlocked might not be interesting, but let's say challenged countries. Challenged because of transport costs. And the cost of transport within Africa is higher than anywhere else. A ship comes from Japan right to Mombasa is cheaper per ton than to transport that from Mombasa to Nairobi. And then you add to Kampala. Then you add to Rwanda. This glass, if it be glass and not the plastic glass, it will be probably selling 25–30% more in Rwanda than in Kenya. Now, whose responsibility is this? Just because Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and South Africa has got a coastline, isn't there ethical responsibility to make very sure that the goods reach to the country of destination as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible? And here, many a times, the cost comes into a factor. And it's a big problem that when the multilateral and the bilateral agencies decides to help the countries of this nature, they should be taking Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Eastern Congo together, negotiating that we will double the size of the port of Mombasa, we'll put a Balamu port, we'll put the 2 lines of electrical lines right up to Rwanda, and we'll build up a railway line and a pipeline right up to southern Sudan and the roads up to Ethiopia. This responsibility alone cannot be taken by Kenya. It has to be multilateral, multi-agencies understanding that it is for the good of every person living in that area. And unless and until this is understood, then and then we can find solution. Today, we have a World Bank representative for Kenya, we have a World Bank representative for Uganda, we have a World Bank representative for Tanzania. Each one of them are giving advices which are not concurrent with making cheap things available for the people of Africa. And this is where the major problem lies. Ethical understanding and duty. I think they have been making this noise for the last 3–4 years. Government started listening, but I was very pleasantly surprised that when His Excellency the President Uhuru went to Mombasa and said, now listen, I want within 5 days the cargo from here to reach Malaba. It used to take 15 days, sometimes 21 days. Who pays for this 15 days and 21 days? It's a poor buyer in Uganda. Unless and until we can understand the complexity of these issues, then and then we can find a solution for how can we help a challenged nations which are our neighbors, and which is not because they are there. They are there, already there. So there's no way we can change it. But Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa must make it a point, and Mozambique must make it a point that the goods traveling from there reach as fast as possible, as cheap as possible. Then I'm sure that this imparity between having different opinion will stop. I was very pleased recently, last week, when His Excellencies all met in Rwanda, in Kigali, and they agreed that we will make one law as far as the external tariffs are concerned. Again, somebody must take the responsibility. And we always see this issue. We are going to do this. That's the promise. All the time, governments after governments keep on giving. Unless you act on it, and I'm very pleased that my president has acted. The previous president has acted and went and brought all the three presidents to Lamu to say that this is what we are going to do. So I think that it's a responsibility, a collective responsibility. And number two, the Africa trades with Africa. Today, our children are sitting around doing nothing at home, and not in hundreds, in millions. Unless we can start understanding and clearly understand that each of us has got some stronger points, some has got a weaker point, but if we can trade within Africa, and instead of this 10% of trade within Africa, we can bring minimum to 30 to 40%, then I think that Africa would not have to go back. We will have our own capabilities because we will be able to manufacture. Now, in all the 16 countries we manufacture, we decided to go to Uganda because we decided, yes, we want to create an employment in Uganda. We want to create an employment in Ethiopia. We want to create employment in Zambia. We want to create employment in Malawi. We want to create employment in all those low countries, so that otherwise those guys will be just receiving our finished products and their children will be sitting at home. So I think it's a multiple responsibility, unless and until we see that responsibility in a multiple way and try to find answers together rather than individually of a country. This individually as a country does not work because the attitude of sovereign state attitude, this is my country and this is what I do, that attitude must vanish. Africa is one and should be one. And unless and until we can understand that reality and start thinking about it, then we can certainly address this issue. So my way of looking is the issue of bilaterals, multilaterals, governments, and ideology, and push for it. Bring the people around. It's not the three presidents, but three presidents and the World Bank and other bilateral agencies getting together and say, yes, we are going to build this railroad and this port. Then the people in southern Sudan will have a cheaper raw items. Their oil will be exported with less amount of cost, and that will be some kind of creation of wealth in those countries. Unless we see that way, I don't think we can find a solution. Only giving promises is not going to work. It's going to be a technically issue which has to be untackled. It's a complex issue, it should be untackled so that it becomes free and freer transport so that it can move faster than ever before. Today, Kenya Railways, which used to have 40% of cargo, runs at 6%. Now tell me, every person, even in Kisumu, in Malaba, pays for that extra inefficiency. And unless government wakes up and says, sorry, this is not going to happen, because it's the people who are suffering and not as a few of us. So I think that the only answer to is, Your Excellency, is to have a common, determined philosophy and getting all multilateral, bilateral, and the governments who are concerned with it together and say, this is our project. This is not my project. It's not a Kenyan project. If we put up from Lamu to Sudan, it has nothing to do with us. There is no interest really for us. But it is our project. And those countries which are involved in it will be a part of that commitment to be our project. And that's the only way we can bring Kenya, Africa together and much better understanding of improving the economic life of our people. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Honorable Manu. Yesterday you were at the SS Gate round table, and I think you truly impressed the room, and today you made the case again. I think my answer is that, and I challenge my team, and I commit myself to the USG here, that the SS Gate for LDC facility is to do it. So I think that that's my answer to the challenges. And so I think we have finished all the speakers. We are running quite behind of schedule. We have few more functions, but I think to truly sort of witness this historical launch of a facility that is determined to deliver, and as I said, we'll do the job, or we'll get the job done. We need some form of commitment in a form of document. So I think my team advised me that the USG and myself would sign some MOU, and so we are serious. We are about business, and we are about getting the job done, starting from this, once I put my signature here, down from my side. Yes? So where we do? Okay.
We'll sign and we'll come back.
Huh? Oh, yeah, so the dignitaries, okay, would you probably just witness our signature by staying here?
Why not? Man, we should go right. We must be witnesses.
Yeah, dear participants, while the dignitaries are sitting down, we're going to finish the last part of the activity here. Let me see. I think I was.
You just have to sit down.
We don't have a master of ceremony, do we? We don't. So I will serve as a master of ceremony. As a conclusion, a good conclusion of, and also a recognition or appreciation for the leaders that we admire so much, not simply because the launch of this facility, but for their years of championship of South-South cooperation for the least developed countries, landlocked countries, and small islands, developing countries. And I take the long name of the office as a long list of challenges that this leader has to help the world deal with. And I think by time that the name of the office will be shorter, and therefore we have less challenges to deal with. But the people and children with food, with education, the list of that will be long. Thank you. So I have the honor to present the award, championship award, to His Excellency USG Jian. We do that? I don't have a ceremony.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is again here?
Where are we going to do it?
There's a lot of,
So we'll do it right
a
here.
lot of prisons.
Will we do it over there?
Oh, this is again?
Well, also with the same admiration, I'm very pleased to present the next award to His Excellency, my big boss, as I said, the Vice President of the General Assembly High Level Committee, His Excellency Ambassador Zolt. I was told that we have another great leader, organizational leadership. This last award here is that His Excellency Ambassador Mahada Opearu, who is the Assistant Secretary General of Organization of the Islamic Cooperation. Your Excellency, you in the room? Oh, right here. Good. I just want to say that the Secretary General of the OIC met with the SG of UN, Ban Ki-moon, just last Monday. The SG of OIC made a very strong statement in the Security Council referring to the organization's commitment to South-South cooperation, and also mentioned the strong relationship between the OIC and the UN Office for South-South Cooperation in particular. And that is, I want to say thank you so much. I think with these words, I think we adjourn the first session of the whole forum. And please join me and help me giving a big applause to our dignitaries. To continue, so because my team is going to assemble somebody here, and then we will start the second session.
I leave you. So you will run the show?
I'm going to run the show.
the DG from the Environment Ministry, they're very sincere. They're saying that they want to first join us rather than initiate anything, to learn, to know what exactly, this modality is about, and I think that's why I said, now is more and more this interministry has become very active. And some of these interministries didn't have much experience in South-South, so it's more interesting for working with them. It's more like a business. Now they are there, but they're understanding of the policy yeah, we need to help.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to this stakeholders meeting. And to get us started, I'm going to invite the Vice President of the High-Level Committee, Mr. Zsolt Herzi, to make a few opening remarks. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Cosmas. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we are running late, and indeed we want to get the show going. So I don't use my pre-written remarks, if you allow me. Let me make just two comments. One is about the South-South cooperation, and the other is about the stakeholders' role in the post-2015 development agenda. With regard to South-South cooperation, we member states in 2012 made it very clear that we would like to see South-South cooperation to be placed at the heart of, thank you very much, at the heart of United Nations operational activities concerning development. And I think this is happening. South-South cooperation during the last couple of years have been mainstreamed into the thinking of the United Nations. And more people understand very clearly that South-South cooperation is a bottom-up approach where it gives very practical solutions to very pragmatic problems and tries to work on the issues at hand. And this is why it has immense role in delivering with regard to the MDG process, which will run its course, as I have mentioned previously, in 2015. Now, about stakeholders' role for the post-2015 agenda. Well, we are talking about a paradigm shift, right? We are trying to put together a post-2015 agenda which is not about the South, but it is about our global village. It should be universal, as we have said. We have global problems. We have to have global solutions. And we have to make sure that we meet those challenges in order to provide a future for our kids and grandkids. Because I think this is what is at stake at this moment, that we will have to find the right balance between the three pillars, meaning economic, social, and environmental pillars, in order to make sure that development is really sustainable, and its true meaning is sustainable. Now, how can we do that? It is quite clear that if we want to make a paradigm shift with regard to what we would like to achieve, we might have to make a paradigm shift with regard to who we involve in that effort. And it is quite clear that although, for example, ODA and other aid programs have extremely important role, which should not be diminished. There's no question about it. We just have to pool our resources. We just have to pool our resources with regard to, when I'm talking about UN agencies around the table, but we have to look outside of UN agencies also. We have to make sure that the private sector is getting interested, become the owner of the process. We have to make sure that private money is flowing into these programs that we will put together and we will call post-2015 development agenda. And we will have to make sure that if there are other stakeholders being philanthropic organizations, NGOs, and you name it, I don't want to go through the long list. We also involve them. Hopefully, during the next 2 years, we will be able to involve them already in the decision-making process. I understand that member states don't like when they hear that there are other stakeholders in the decision-making process. So let me call it the decision-shaping process. And of course, member states will make sure that we will have a good development agenda at the end of their decision-making process. But then comes the more important, let's say, for me, this is how it looks like, the more important phase of our work, when we will have to implement that 2015 development agenda. And for that, definitely, we will need everybody's help and we will need everybody's assistance. With that, ladies and gentlemen, let me give back the floor to Cosmas. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zolt. And I think also you've given us the example. This is a small meeting. We wanted a closed meeting. We want to interact almost informally. So I'm inviting everybody to come close so that we can interact on a very face-to-face basis. This has become an annual event that we meet. And one of the things that I think we're gaining is that we're getting to know each other. Quite a number of you have been at these meetings quite a number of times, and we're getting to know each other. So in a way, the meeting helps us to get out of our institutional silos and talk about what it is that we do. And in many instances, we are actually collaborating after these meetings. We call each other, we email each other, and we do business together. In other words, this meeting helps us to let the left hand know what the right hand is doing, which is very important in the UN system. We have spent some time looking at what guidelines we have. In other words, we're trying to learn what are the terms of engagement in this business. We, as the UN system, are in a supportive role to member states, but we need to know the terms of engagement. How do we help these countries to use South-South and Triangular cooperation to improve their national standing? But beyond their national standing, we also try to help them as they each try to integrate, to create regional neighborhoods. And we try to see how South-South cooperation fits in. We also try to see how South-South cooperation enables these countries to function well as global citizens. And I think this contribution, which is very well illustrated in our terms of engagement, which my colleague, the Bel Guta, will speak about later, are all there. And today, on the panel, again, continuing this conversation that helps us to know each other and to know what we're doing, I have a number of organizations represented here. This is maybe the third time that we come together and we ask ourselves, what is your business model? And we're doing it again, so that we get to know what the right hand and what the left hand is doing, so that we have that commonality of understanding. So on the panel, again, to continue the discussion, we have Ova Hirel, which comes from the Convention on Biodiversity. While at the Office for South-South Cooperation, we try to kind of come up with the plans and the strategies and what have you. I've worked with Oliver, and interestingly, they were looking further than we do. I was working with him on a 10-year program that we're designing on South-South Cooperation. And we learned a lot, and I think we're going to hear more from there. We also have Grace Wang from UNDP. UNDP, over the last maybe a year or 2 years, has been designing its strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, they're trying to see how do we bring South-South cooperation into the organizational thinking and action, into all the policies and all the programs. For a big organization like UNDP, having that kind of thinking, there's a lot that we're going to learn from Grace, how they are thinking about bringing South-South cooperation and mobilizing everybody in the organization. We also have Laurent Porty from the World Bank. The World Bank has been establishing knowledge hubs. I was kind of privileged to join them in Bali when they launched the knowledge hubs. But since then, they've mobilized a lot of huge organizations to learn how do they share knowledge. And I think he's going to let us know how that is done. I did listen on quite a few of their webinars, and one of them was really fascinating. They brought in the NASA, the National Space Agency of US, and they asked them, how do you share knowledge about space exploration, and how do you bring it to high schools, to colleges? He's going to tell us all about that, and I think that's exciting, that we're not only in our silos, but we're learning from other big agencies out there and how they do business. We're going also to have, we have also on the panel, Mr. Sheikh Sorang, and he's going to talk a lot about scaling up. His organization is doing a lot in that area, and it's going to tell us more of how we do business. We've also been joined by ILO, by Amita Nisra, from UNIDO. UNIDO has been establishing centers for South-South cooperation in many of the emerging economies. We in UNDP also are trying to establish certain centers. So it's again important that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And I think I look forward to Anita's contribution to the discussion. We are going to wrap it up with the Bell Guta, who will be again speaking about the terms of engagement, the kind of guidelines that should inform our common approaches to South-South cooperation. And again, it's again to deepen our common understanding of how we do business together. So without further ado, I'm now going to ask my colleague Oliver to take over the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cosmas, for your kind invitation. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Oliver Hillel, and it's actually the first time I'm here. So for me, it's one of those examples in which I would look forward to learning about all of your initiatives. And what I would like to share with you today in a few minutes, over a few minutes, is the experience that we've had in the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. But I also wanted to kind of stand in place of all my colleagues of the other multilateral environmental agreement secretariats, because I understand that they share many of the same situations and experiences that we share. So the fact is that before coming here, I've had a look at the content and the latest decisions, at least of the 8 or 10 multilateral environmental agreements with which I work more commonly, the Rio Conventions and the Biodiversity Liaison Group of Conventions. And as you said, Mr. Solthetesi, in fact, South-South cooperation is mainstreamed in any one of them. It's all over, it's well discussed, it's well incorporated, particularly, as we all know, with triangular and in complement to North-South cooperation. However, the convention in itself has a very specific situation in which in 2006, South Africa at the time was the head of G77. And they requested the Secretariat, with some support from the GEF at the time, to develop a multi-year plan of action on South-South cooperation on biodiversity for development. And after a number of expert meetings, indeed, the G77 had developed this plan, which was reflecting, in fact, the whole strategic plan for the 10 years, 2011-2020, of the convention. So by design and with support at the time it was still the office, and now it's UNOSCC. We developed this plan also, I should say, and mention here very clearly, with the support of UNEP and our colleague Bob Kakuyo, because UNEP also very clearly has South-South cooperation in its Bali strategic plan and the multi-year program of action. So with this, we were able to develop the plan, but then of course, and this is another lesson that we can see everywhere, the moment you talk about South-South cooperation, of course, the North does feel a little bit excluded. So there was the issue that if this is a South-South plan, how do we want all 192 countries and the European Union to adopt a plan that is South-South cooperation? So the way we solved this in the convention, we unfortunately lost some time in this, but the negotiation led to the multi-year plan of action being adopted by the G77 and China, and then welcomed and endorsed, and all the conference of the parties invited all the parties to implement that plan without adopting it itself. So that was the solution that we had at the time. And in South-South cooperation, also in terms of the business model, I wanted to say that this Expo and the support of the UN Office on South-South cooperation has been a mainstay of our implementation of that. We have been lucky enough to participate in the Vienna so ably hosted by UNIDO in Vienna last year. And what we've seen there is that we can start working on technical and scientific cooperation. For the Biodiversity Convention, that's a very essential element. So we had to focus on this, and what we did is identify some of the leading agencies in developing countries. Because the point is, and I'm curious to hear about the experience of other colleagues, but even having 35 different issues and programs of work, as you know, the Convention on Biological Diversity is a little bit of everything. There's 35 different issues, themes, now the 20 targets of the Aichi targets. It's a complicated convention. However, when you look at where the information, the scientific, technical background information is generated, our experience is that you have about 20 agencies in the whole world. Some of them are global, other are regionals, other are national, but you will always talk to the same. And in fact, many of them are here in Nairobi with us in the GSSD, such as SPREP and ASEAN, ACB, and many others. So those agencies are the ones from all this information where it comes. So we've been collaborating with UNEP and the UN Office on South-South Cooperation to identify the best practices, and we look forward to a publication of those and the lessons learned in terms of South-South cooperation. Now, also I wanted to say here that the need for South-South cooperation comes because of what the Rio +20 document calls the changing architecture of international aid. Many speakers have talked about that. So we want to change the way things are done. And in spite of just reflecting what I'm saying here, I think the currency of South-South and triangular cooperation is fundamentally different than the currency of North-South. And I remember in the past, in my own international cooperation work, every year or two you had to go to Europe, to Brussels, to Washington, D.C. to find your money to continue cooperation. Now, what is changing today? First, there is no more that amount of money. So now we have to look more at the common interests and the skills and the expertise than the money. So what I'm saying is the currency has changed somewhat, and today a country, for instance, Chile and Peru, I'm Brazilian myself, so in South America, Chile and Peru are probably best guided looking at other countries in South America and Central America for the expertise that they need, and then actually design based on expertise, on matching funds. It's not about you giving me money, but it's about us putting our actual work programs together and see to what extent we can get some money to help us from outside. But it's not necessarily doing that. And the other thing that we're seeing, Mr. Solhetesi, you very clearly said it's already mainstreamed, yes. But I don't think what we have mainstreamed yet, at least not in the MEAs, is how do we do South-South cooperation? It's different. You don't have a donor and recipient. You have several donors and recipients, and you're trying to see how that new architecture looks. We need to learn the ropes. We need to learn with IBSA, We need to learn with China-ASEAN cooperation. We need to learn with the new ways because, of course, the new players do not want to be repeating and want to learn exactly like developed countries. How can we make this whole thing more effective? Of course, now, what we also are seeing that those agencies in the South, and here I'll take an example from the so-called Consortium of Scientific Partners in the Convention. Those are 22 museums, agencies, the Smithsonian institutions, the Royal Belgian Museum, but also InBio from Costa Rica, SanBio from Africa, Embrapa from Brazil. Unfortunately, in this consortium, and I think this will reflect many of the networks that we have today, out of 22 agencies, only 4 come from developing countries. So we have to strengthen the participation of those centers of expertise. And what we also see, for instance, InBio, very tiny country called Costa Rica, but InBio for more than 25 years has been doing inventories of bioresources. And they know everything about that. They cooperate with more than 50 parties. However, they do not have the resources to respond to the demands of other countries. I take the Chinese Academy of Science, the biggest scientific institution in the world, 18,000 researchers. For the first time a few years ago, China published more scientific articles than the United States. So this is changing architecture. But how do we make China and Brazil and Mexico and Indonesia and so many other countries who are really generating new information and knowledge, how do we give them the capacity to become regional hubs of cooperation? Because what the director of InBio famously said is, I receive requests from everyone, but I do not have the resources to respond to El Salvador, to Guatemala, to Nicaragua. I do not have it. So this is our challenge, at least in the CBD. I will not bore you with the text of the Convention on South-South Cooperation, but suffices to say that at the last meeting in India, the Conference of the Parties gave the Secretariat of the CBD for the first time, and this is new, and I've seen this happening in other MEAs as well, a very clear mandate to help agencies like yourselves and UNEP and UNDP to actually promote a coherent system, not of South-South cooperation, but of effective technical and scientific cooperation, just as you said. So I think those are some of the lessons that we've learned. I just come from a meeting parallel to our subsidiary body on technical and technological advice, in which we discussed technical and scientific cooperation, and I'm very glad to say, and this is probably the case in many of the MEAs, that Korea, as the president of COP12, has already indicated to us that they would like to invest in key issues and interventions on scientific and technical cooperation. So there are many doors open for us for matchmaking. We need to learn from the GSSD and from UN Office and many others. How do we bring, and from IFAD and World Bank, how do we do that? How can we work together to make the matches of the needs of the offers? Because this idea of making long lists of technology needs and then just everyone needs it, I think the energy of those who hold the answers and the solutions, they want to sell them. So instead of looking at only the needs, we should match the needs with the offers. And this, I think, has a role for the MEA secretariats, not only for the CBD, but Ramsar, for instance, has already regional initiatives. CCD has some regional offices. And in fact, our CBD, for instance, works with UNEP. UNEP has regional offices which very recently have been given a more influential relation with the executive decision-making bodies. And I think that's what we need to do now. We need to go regional, and we need to start implementing this. And in this sense, the last message I'd like to share with you is that India, the government of India, at our 11th conference of the parties, they made another good idea as a business model, which is to call for pledges, what they call the Hyderabad Call for Biodiversity Champions. The idea there is to take initiatives such as the island challenges, Micronesia, Caribbean, Western Indian Ocean, commitments to certain targets or the CGIAR network, and ask them, looking at the strategic plan on biodiversity, looking at what you've done up to now, what can you pledge from now for the last 5 years of the strategic plan, and what do you need for that? So the idea is to do the biodiversity champions to come and say, we have, like the Caribbean Challenge nowadays, we have this amount of dollars to do our sustainable use of protected areas, and we want this amount more. So that is the idea of announcing the champions and calling to the support of those champions. I think those are the thoughts, and I very much look forward to sharing with you in the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Again, you can see that while many of us work in very voluntary arrangements, the CBD kind of pushes a treaty-based South-South cooperation, which has its own complexities. It also touches regional and global public goods, in which so many other parties are involved. And again, that brings certain challenges, which I think Oliver has navigated and has highlighted how to deal with that. He has also given us an idea that there is a changing architecture, a new architecture in development cooperation, which we need to learn and adapt to. So we really thank him. I now invite Grace to take the floor. I would also like to remind the panelists that please try to use 8 minutes so that we have more time. 8, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Grace Wang. I'm from UNDP. I would like to share with you the new UNDP strategic plan for 2014 and 2017, and how, in that context, UNDP aspire to support South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. Well, I don't need to say that. Never mind. While they're fixing.
Because they need to see this. Let me just see if
Yeah.
It's okay. It's hanging from upstairs over there.
It's handling from there.
It's hanging from
so
that
they
side.
need to change it there.
Yeah. Don't worry. I will just talk about it. We all know that the development landscape is changing very fast, and I don't need to say how important it is for us to realize the goals that we agreed through the MDGs and the future goals that we would agree for post-2015 through multiple means of implementation. So South-South cooperation is one of the important mechanisms, and it will be becoming more and more important. In the strategic plan, UNDP, in the process of developing this new strategic plan, UNDP actually reflected on what we have done before and what was the challenges, what was the weaknesses of this organization. So I really appreciate the whole process of being a self-reflecting and sometimes self-criticizing exercise. So that's why in this new strategic plan, there are several very important changes. On the South-South cooperation, UNDP has put it as the center of the core ways of working for our policy, program, and operations. We say in the strategic plan that in the next 4 years, we will play 2 major functions. First, by hosting the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, UNDP would like to strengthen support for system-wide coordination and action through the South-South Cooperation Office under the guidance of the high-level committee. And second, we haven't done the second well before, but now we hope to utilize UNDP's country and programmatic reach and resources to provide a global operational arm for South-South and triangular cooperation that also will be accessible to other members of the United Nations development system. What does that mean? That meaning that in order to be this kind of operational arm globally to support South-South and triangular cooperation, we need to find our focus. So there are 3 focus areas. Number 1 is about knowledge. Knowledge of what has worked and what hasn't worked in South-South cooperation. Knowledge about what has actually helped developing countries to achieve MDGs and what could be useful for the world to reflect on, to build on, for achieving future development agenda. number 2 focus area is enabling harmonization of policies, legal frameworks, and regulations so that South-South cooperation can be deepened and enhanced to maximize mutual benefits. And number 3 focus area is to provide strategic funding to manage startup collaboration, but also on promising ideas. This organization is committed to facilitate scaling up of promising ideas. In terms of business model, I know the organizer at the beginning asked me to talk more about our strategic partnership with emerging economies and our centers of excellence. I thought, yes, if I talked about that last year, I would focus on that. But this year, I think it's very important that I put these 2 initiatives into this bigger framework of the strategic plan, because that is what we have learned and reflected from our previous approach. And the new plan gives continuity to enhance those approach, but also added much more to that. I think in the new strategic plan, this organization realized that we actually have an advantage which we need to tap into fully. That is, we have this global presence. We have the treasure of country programs. And that should be the basis of us to say we mainstream South-South and to deliver results on the ground. So that's why I put the country level at the top level. At the country level, the support to South-South cooperation would be through multi-country collective actions and also country-to-country exchanges. I put these 2 separately is because during the discussion for the strategic plan, I realized that many colleagues, sometimes when they think about South-South cooperation, it's very easy for them to first think about or only think about country-to-country exchange. One country provides something, another country receives something. But I would like to say that is only one element of South-South cooperation. Actually, multi-country joint actions to tackle global challenges, regional challenges, sub-regional challenges, neighborhood challenges, those are very important South-South cooperation. And that can be done at country level, regional level, and global level. So number 3, from the country program, we can support capacity development for South-South cooperation. Some colleagues already heard me before in the earlier event, and I totally agree with the previous speaker and also ambassador about the capacity development. The capacity for South-South cooperation is not just about government. It's not just about a agency within a government. It's about the government as a whole. It's about the society as a whole. So if you want to have sustainable impact, you have to leverage the energy and let out the energy of private sector and civil society organization. I particularly like the very realistic, practical name of the policy shaping process. If we can do that, let's do that. Let's start from there and to do that to a maximum level so that it will become policy making and it will really become this democratic way of making policies at all levels. At regional level, our regional programs will focusing on regional integration, support regional integration efforts in partnership with regional and sub-regional mechanisms and support neighborhood initiatives. At global level, global policy dialogue is very important. That is to link South-South cooperation practice with global development policies. A lot of evidence has been put forward, but I think there's still a knowledge gap. The gap is maybe we know the result, but we don't find enough analysis on how this result have been achieved effectively through South-South cooperation. The process of South-South cooperation sometimes happen at a ground level between countries, sometimes at a level, meso level between institutions. And sometimes it is individual champions who actually triggered certain changes. So all these elements will tell us something for the future implementation of the post-2015 agenda. How do you leverage the whole societal energy to do that? So globally, we can, of course, also support global knowledge exchanges. And the third bullet point I want to draw your attention to is the organization now is very serious about having a global quality assurance and capacity development support for all country and regional programs. So in order to do that, I will skip those because we have limited time. I will just give you a few updates which I think are very instrumental to start implement this vision of linking country, region, and global without duplicating any efforts. Number one, I would like to talk about the new South-South cooperation project modality. UNDP has reflected on our own project modality. We realized that for many years we have just been doing too well on the North-South cooperation modality and single country programs. Meaning, if one country wanted to do all multi-country projects, then the accountability issue, financial flow, all come into play. So it would be very challenging for a country to do that without involving another unit in the organization, which is the regional unit, and then probably if it's cross-region, have to engage also a global headquarter unit. So the transaction would be long. Now what we have done is we have created a new business model, new project model, so that a single country program, country office, can do it with multiple country offices in a way that ensure common accountability and a common outcome. And the transaction of the finance will be very clear-cut. So they don't have, if the nature of the collaboration is the nature that could be done at country level, you don't have to go through region and global. But if the nature is regional, or if the nature is global, you directly do it there, but involving the country level. So just quickly go through other recent updates very quickly. We have done an alignment process to develop result-based management framework for both strategic plan monitoring and also regional program and country programs. We have set up a coordination network of UNDP South-South cooperation focal points across all regions and units in the organization. And we are initiating a program mapping and institutional review to build the knowledge base of what worked and what hasn't. We have centers of excellence in many southern countries. Some of the centers of excellence are owned by the country, driven by the country. Others are supported. So I won't go into details. I know UNIDO will also talk about centers of excellence. And we have established the strategic partnerships with 7 emerging economies. South-South corporate strategy is also being developed. So this is just a quick overview of what the recent thinking and strategy moving forward for UNDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Actually, a lot of evaluations found that in the promotion of South-South cooperation, many agencies were going about it in an ad hoc fashion. But recently, quite a number of agencies have developed strategic plans. And UNDP has been very, very thorough in developing its plan, as Grace has helped us to understand. They have identified areas of focus. They have identified resources. They've identified their comparative advantage. And they're really going about it in a very systematic fashion. But the last point you made about the modality is the one thing I really like also to stress. I think other agencies can learn from this because it looks at exactly what happens at a country level if countries are going to you're going to have cross-border programming. And I think you might want to look at that modality going forward. We're really running short of time. I would have invited some questions, but I think I'm going to take another panelist so that we keep going, and we shall invite questions a bit later. Please.
Thank you, Cosmas. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Laurent Porte. I work with the new World Bank Vice Presidency for Change, Knowledge and Learning, which was put in place as a part of the new strategy of the bank that was recently adopted by the board. This new strategy has two main pillars. The first one is to actually try to reduce the percentage of people living on extreme poverty to 3% by 2030. And the other one is to promote inclusion and shared prosperity. So this is a very ambitious, these are very ambitious goals. How are we going to do this? I think as per this new strategy, the way the World Bank thinks about knowledge, the way it captures it, mobilizes, deploys it, as well as how it translates it into meaningful learning for both its staff and clients, will certainly represent one of the most important transformations that the World Bank Group is going to go through in the very near future. So, how can knowledge exchange support this vision? First, through acceleration, because a number of studies show that knowledge exchange can unlock political economy. It can help build capacitation through the installations of skills for more effective delivery. And through cooperation, enhanced cooperation, more systematical partnership, where development experience actually become a currency. Earlier this year, the bank has commissioned a study on the effectiveness of South-South knowledge exchange in order to better understand the kinds of development challenges knowledge exchange can address, under which conditions, with which type of actors, and using what instruments. So this study builds on over 2 years and about 100 documented cases on South-South knowledge exchange. And it includes a review about 55 of these cases and dozens of interviews with participants, project leaders, knowledge providers, and also knowledge recipients. So what are the main findings? The cases examined for this study, they have helped identify 4 critical ways that mediated knowledge exchange can actually accelerate development process. We call these the big effects of knowledge exchange. First, knowledge exchange can help countries to identify the right path forward by opening up new possibilities and exposing decision makers, development practitioners, and all the stakeholders to solutions that have worked in similar or even more difficult conditions. This way, countries more quickly get on a development path with a higher chance for success. The second one is it shows that knowledge exchange can create an effective design and policy framework by transferring the technical and operational knowledge. Third, knowledge exchange helps countries enhance implementation by learning the practical aspects of efficient organizational arrangements. And finally, knowledge exchange also helps countries overcome implementation bottlenecks by giving stakeholders the means to reach consensus for action and/or the ability to adopt proven implementation practices. So for about 2 years now, the World Bank has been supporting the development of knowledge hubs. What do we call knowledge hubs? Basically, there are institutions or networks that are dedicated to capture, validate, share, and exchange development experiences with national or international partners in order to accelerate development. So in a way, the key functions of knowledge hubs are to really institutionalize knowledge exchange at the country level. Knowledge hubs can operate at the country level coordination or at the sector level coordination. One important milestone on this agenda was the organization of a high-level meeting in Indonesia about 18 months ago in partnership with UNDP, JICA, and the government of Indonesia, where about 300 participants from 46 countries, mostly middle-income countries, came. So the key messages of this meeting were that countries are indeed increasingly thinking about how to better institutionalize their knowledge exchange activities. There is not one right approach to doing this, but numerous ways to develop knowledge hubs. Questions like the institutional setup, the national coordination, development of knowledge supply, the design and implementation process, the funding, and the monitoring and evaluations are critical issues to be addressed. But this was just a starting point in this agenda. As a follow-up, the bank and its partners have set up a communities of practice that really offers a number of peer learning opportunities. And this community of practice actually focuses on 8 areas of learning pertaining to the institutional arrangements for knowledge hubs. So how do you transform institutions? What kind of organizational models can you adopt to make it more efficient? What kind of financial tools can you use? Which type of strategic partnership you want to engage in? And also they look at the operational aspects of knowledge hubs. So for instance, how do you validate and catalog knowledge? How do you package these development solutions? How do you plan and implement your knowledge exchange? And finally, how do you measure the results? How do you document them? And how do you share them? So the main objective, of course, is to create a space focusing on the how-to of knowledge exchange, where all the members can share these methods and techniques on how to capture, package, and share. The core target audience consists of national government-led knowledge hubs with either a cross-thematic coordination mandate or a sectoral coordination mandate, and various numbers of institutions focusing on thematic areas. The peer learning activities actually take place in the form of blogs, interviews, e-discussions, and webinars that feature experts from both private, public development organizations, also civil sector organizations. So for instance, we recently have a person from UNDP Southeast Asia Center who actually shared their experience in establishing strategic partnerships. We had also a webinar with NASA that Cosmas was referring to, where they explained how they actually learned from a number of failures to actually organize more effective knowledge exchange. On a different note on this agenda, the World Bank is also working on developing the country capacity for knowledge sharing. The activity, the objective of this activity consists of coming up with a systematic approach for these thematic institutions to address both the domestic and the international demand for operational experiences. So the bank has developed a methodology which has 3 steps. The first one consists in a capacity assessment and data collection workshop. The second step runs through a data analysis workshop that allows to develop some kind of common understanding and an agreement of the issues that need to be addressed in priority. And this leads eventually to the development of a knowledge sharing vision statement. And finally, the third step is a planning workshop where participants agree on priority action to be engaged in, and also to define a knowledge sharing roadmap and implementation plan. A number of governments, actually, such as Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, Nigeria, are pioneering these efforts to set up and consolidate knowledge hubs, particularly in specific thematic areas where valuable solutions have been developed. These initiatives help scale up institutional and operational capacities to capture, to validate, package, and share knowledge in a systematic and sustainable way. So through a number of pilot knowledge hub engagements, the bank is providing support to these countries, to these governments or sector institutions that wish to invest in their knowledge hubs in practical ways while also learning from each other. So these pilots are described here. We're working in Indonesia with the Disaster Risk Management Agency. In Nigeria, we are helping the Lagos Metropolitan Transport Authority, LAMATA, to actually package its operational experience, because it's been actually contacted by many cities in Africa and beyond who are eager to learn on how LAMATA has managed to really improve the urban transport system in Lagos. And we also have a current engagement with the Statistical Agency in Colombia, and with ABES, the National Association for Environmental and Sanitary Engineering in Brazil. Finally, a quick word on the other support and products and services that we are using, that we have developed. We have this practical guide on the organization of knowledge exchange, the art of knowledge exchange, which is actually available online, and we are delivering workshops to development practitioners and government officials. We want to actually look at the range of tools and instruments that you can choose from in order to organize impactful knowledge sharing. The bank is managing the South-South facility, which is a multi-donor trust fund that was created about 4 years ago, and that's helping operational teams to organize knowledge exchange. And it's interesting to note that the main contributors to this trust fund are actually non-traditional donors. And I think I will stop here. I have left on the table here a few flyers to present the community of practice on knowledge hubs, and I'd like to invite all of you to have a look, and hopefully you will find this useful. And I would like also to invite you to share your experience on this community. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laurent. If there's anything that is a thread that runs through what we all do in South-South Cooperation, it's knowledge exchange. All the agencies do it. But I would like to suggest that the World Bank has really perfected this art. And I would urge all of you to look at their websites to see how they go about it, because what he's given us is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much, their websites are so rich in methodology, in analysis, in case studies on what really works in this business. We're now going to go straight on to IFAD. IFAD, I think, Sheikh is ready to make a presentation, so please.
Just open one. See. This one? No, it's either this one because it has numbers. Yeah, this one. This one? Just this one. Thank you very much. Cosmas, thanks for, and through you to the Secretariat for giving us the opportunity to talk to like-minded partners and governments on an issue of common interest. Just taking it from what you said earlier, I was also looking at what the World Bank has done, and I was telling Laurent that rather than all of us tending to hire the same experts to give us what the others have done, which we don't know about. Maybe if we put our heads together, we have a community of practice, and then we will ask those experts to tell us what none of us have had time to do. And I think this is probably what could be one sort of take home from this. The other quick remark is that it seems that we are moving from a situation where all of us, we were generating knowledge, very busy generating it, and then we say we share knowledge. Now we are saying we are brokering knowledge. But when you broker knowledge, you broker it from where it happens, that is in the South, right? And that is how we are moving from a knowledge sort of centered paradigm to a South-South agenda. And this is very interesting. That's number one. Number two is that we tended also in the past to look at knowledge here, innovation there, and do a lot of work about it, and scaling up, do a lot of talk about it. Now it seems that it is clearer and clearer that knowledge and innovation, they clearly go together, okay? And it's also becoming increasingly clear that that third leg that was missing is that scaling up. And that's how we're getting this triad. That's at least the work that's coming out of the work that we've been doing from Brookings. And so some of you who were there during this lunchtime seminar, you had a flavor of it. So I will just flip very quickly through these slides to allow time for discussion, which is the intention of Cosmos. Drivers of change, I won't dwell about it because it's amply discussed in the different documents that have been given to us, but two big drivers is, the globalization, climate change, etc., among many other things, of course, internal processes, political, and so on, technology, connectivity, migration, remittance, and this. All those are drivers, that things that make champions, would-be champions, feel like doing something, or feel like not doing anything about it, depending on whether it's an incentive or disincentive about it. But those, it's important to keep those as drivers. But on the other hand, we have opportunity, and I have to talk about agricultural development. That's where I belong, at least for the time being. Agriculture research for development, smallholder agriculture as a business, a producer organization, public-private partnership, to which we are adding also now public-private people partnership, because when we tell private, we tend to think of the corporate sector. So this is why the 3P is becoming now 4P. The context, multipolar world, amply discussed. Multifaceted challenges also amply discussed over the past 2 days. Multiple responses also, we've heard about it during the solution forums. But looking at it from the moon, as somebody was suggesting, or not from the moon, it's too far, but bird's eye view, we get this, so many flowers, not necessarily a nice garden. Good practices also, that's a worm's eye view, you see plenty of practices, but then it's not adding up. So what do? We need to have a